Hey, my handsome ladies and gentlemen, this is Shmeaty. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. I've yet to look at Togekiss this season, and Togekiss is a Pokemon that has massively been improved. A year or two ago, it got this Community Day Aura Spear, and we were all left questioning why, because Togekiss had not been relevant in any league for many years, so we were all scratching our heads at that one, but now it all makes sense, as Togekiss has access to Aura Sphere, which is 40 energy and 80 damage, which makes it a 2 damage per energy move. We're going to be getting into game number 1, going up against an Ember Turtonator. That is a very interesting pick for the Open Ultra League. I'm going to build up to the Dazzling Gleam, and I'm going to send it. Dazzling Gleam would inflict a lot of damage even onto the bulky Turtonator, and indeed it does. Now, I debated shielding this, but I don't think this could be a flash cannon just yet, so I no shield, and it's a flamethrower, but of course Togekiss takes a massive amount of damage from it anyway. They're going to attempt to catch our Aura Sphere onto their Corviknight, but we're going to react by switching into our Palkia. Corviknight is going to be able to fire off the payback that does quite a lot of damage onto Palkia. Palkia reaching for the Fire Blast, and we are clicking on the one button that will release the most dopamine. Fire Blast unfortunately gets shielded by the Corviknight, and I think we're getting Sand Attack down there. Not the best start for our Palkia gaming, but we are just going to bring in our Togekiss. Togekiss will be able to absorb an Air Cutter from this range and not get Sand Attack down. Unlike our unfortunate Palkia, they are going to be able to fire off the Air Cutter. This is not going to do enough damage to the Togekiss to get the knockout. And I'm going to be able to build up and send another Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere onto the Corviknight will start chipping them very low, and now the aggressive pivot into our Dusknoir. Dusknoir would probably have to respect the payback here, and they do send the payback, which is great for us. In comes the Turtonator once again. Turtonator does have access to Brutal Swing, but this one is not running it. This one's on Dragon Claw and Flamethrower. Unfortunately, they're able to make a last-second move here. Not the best situation for us to be a part of, but I am going to shield up. Dragon Claw is shielded. We are now down both of our shields, hoping that when the Corviknight comes back in, we're able to get that farm down. In the back, they've got Virizion, but unfortunately, Dusknoir is in range of one move from the Virizion, so not the best spot. I'm going to fire off one further Astonish catch onto the Togekiss. Togekiss will likely get KO'd even if they zero bubble the Leaf Blade, and I believe they probably tried to go for it. In comes the Corviknight, it gets farmed down, and it's all up to if we can get enough damage onto this Virizion to get the knockout. Dynamic Punch onto the Virizion, just not enough, and I have to go for a further Astonish there because they still have a shield remaining, so I would have had to hope that they overtapped, but very good game to this first trainer. GG's. Getting into the next one, we've got Togekiss leading into Walrein. Wow, this is not good for me at all. I think I'm going to have to immediately safe switch. Yeah, I'm safe switching into the Palkia, but this is just not a good situation for me. They're going to bring in their Venusaur, and please no shield this. I've got the Fire Blast locked and loaded. Venusaur could potentially get one shot here, but everybody was respecting the Fire Blast. I took the screenshot just in case they let it go, but Venusaur had no intentions of doing so. They are now going to be able to go for the Frenzy Plant that does quite a lot of damage, KOing the Palkia from pretty much full HP. Palkia is a very fun pick in the Ultra League, but definitely not one of the best or bulkiest. They are going to retaliate with a Frenzy Plant. They are now going to bring in Walrein, but we know that this is only going to be a non-Shadow Icicle Sphere, so we do not have to respect it. Does still do quite a bit of chip damage onto the Dusknoir. I build up to the back-to-back Dynamic Punches, and now if my opponent has to shield, they're going to have to shield twice. I'm looking for the Astonish down, able to get it onto that Walrein. It's very nice news for us. Are they going to bring in the Venusaur is the question. No matter what they do, it looks like I'm looking to under-tap my Shadow Punches. I do have 2 of those available as well. Okay, in classic Shmeaty fashion, we actually don't have 2 available. We only have 1. I'm going to definitely get a "we have move" comment in the comment section down below. If you know, you know. Nevertheless, I'm going to bring in the Togekiss. Kind of have to hope that they're going for the Torch Song here with a full send to Shadow Ball. And now it's all up to if Togekiss can get the farm down. Togekiss able to get the farm down. In comes the Venusaur, and we're clicking on the Dazzling Gleam button. Dazzling Gleam onto the Venusaur is going to connect. Does quite a lot of damage, and it's a simul KO, but with Dusknoir alive on low HP in the back, that game's a win. Looks like Gastradon is incurring some of that RPS Pokemon karma leading into a flying type, but they are going to safe switch into their own Togekiss, which unfortunately is going to be on Psyshock. Not the cleanest response here, so I'm going to either look to get a lot of damage onto them or force a shield with this Dazzling Gleam, and then probably look to pivot into my Dusknoir. Dazzling Gleam is going to grab the shield from their Togekiss, and now in comes Dusknoir. Dusknoir very happy to no-shield a potential Psyshock here because we know that they're not going to forego Aura Sphere. That is very good coverage for the Fairy-type Pokemon to have. So we know the hardest move they can throw at us is going to be a Psyshock, and this is only going to be enough for a Psyshock, but I am going to shield it up. Psyshock shielded by the Dusknoir. Now it looks like they attempt to make a catch, bringing in that Gastradon, but we are at the back-to-back Dynamic Punches. Dynamic Punch number 1 onto the Gastradon is going to do a sizable amount of damage. I tried to go for 1 further Astonish and look to pivot out, hoping I could live on 1 HP. No such luck for me, so I am going to have to now bring in the Togekiss, and they go for the Water Pulse. Does quite a lot of damage, and I'm getting Mud Slap down. This is probably about as worst case scenario as it could get. I am going to have to no-shield the move with my Palkia here. It's all on the 1-to-1 shield Palkia up against 3 Pokemon remaining on the enemy team, but they are going to bring in Talonflame, and I'm going to go for the CMP tie. If Talonflame does no-shield, they are going to get KO'd. Do they shield it up? They do not, and unfortunately Aqua Tail is just not enough to KO. One of those situations where I really wish I had Spatial Rend, but this is one of those cool has move Palkias. This is a I got scammed, and so I have to run Fire Blast for the means Palkias, but nevertheless we're able to get the Dragon Breath farm down onto the Talonflame. Back in comes the Togekiss, but we've got the back-to-back Aqua Tails loaded now. Aqua Tail number 1, if it does not grab the shield from the Togekiss will go down, and they are going to stay in. They probably had to look to try to pivot out there, but no such luck for them. Togekiss goes down, in comes the Gastradon, and we're able to make a last-second Aqua Tail Palkia, putting the entire team on his back there. GG's to this trainer. Alright, getting into the next one. It's going to be Togekiss leading into another Togekiss. Yeah, this is just the Togekiss lead. I said it at the start of the season, but yeah, this is definitely one of those Pokemon that I feel like is going to have its peak viability met in the Ultra League. This coverage as well as the typing, it just suits the Ultra League a lot better, as well as its stat product. Everything's a little bulkier in the Ultra League, so it can't afford to no-shield a move in the Ultra League, whereas in the Great League, you're kind of cooked. Nevertheless, we know we're going to end up getting farmed down there. They're going to be able to fire off a move at my Dusknoir. I am going to no-shield it, and it is going to be the Dazzling Gleam. Does quite a lot of damage. In comes a Feraligatr, and I'm going to fire off the Shadow Punch here, but there's not a whole lot of reason for me to do so. I probably should have looked to go for the Dynamic Punch, which is a harder hitting move there. I think with that next Astonish, it could have came a lot closer to KOing. They fire off a move here, and I'm convinced this is only going to be a Hydro Cannon because they threw it immediately upon seeing the Palkia. You've got a Kingdra in the back. This not looking too good for me, to be honest with you, but I'm going to bring in my Togekiss, do whatever I can. The Dragon Breaths are double resisted, and they don't do as much damage as last season. Are we going to be able to get this off? If we're able to get this Aura Sphere off, we're in a tremendously good spot. They go for the Akazuka, they get the debuff. I'm not going to be able to reach the Dazzling Gleam, so I'm going to settle for the Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere onto the Kingdra, going to do a decent amount of damage, but not quite decent enough. I'm bringing in the Palkia. Palkia looking to go for the Aqua Tail and farm down combo. Aqua Tail going to be shielded by the Kingdra. In comes the Feraligatr. Feraligatr is going to be able to make a move here. I'm going to have to shield it up. Even though it's a double resisted Hydro Cannon, I can't afford to drop any more HP. We're able to get the farm down of the Feraligatr. Now it's all up to if this Aqua Tail will be enough to KO the Kingdra. I don't believe it is. Kingdra lives on 1 HP. That's a little more than 1 HP, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, they go for the Outrage onto the Palkia. That was more than enough damage to KO. GG's. Getting into the next one, Togekiss leading into Galarian Moltres, the scourge of Season 23's Ultra League meta, but there have been a lot of viability and attack availability updates to a lot of Pokemon that make this Pokemon a little less potent, such as Togekiss being able to take pretty much all of its HP with the Dazzling Gleam. They are going to go for the Brave Bird, and they're going to allow themselves to get farmed down, which makes me think they need alignment, or at least something needs to end up on this Togekiss. They are going to bring in a Unova Stunfisk, and they are going to fire off a Discharge at the Palkia. That is the most a Discharge has ever done in this league. In comes Golurk. Golurk is going to be hit with an Aqua Tail, but if they shield once, they're going to have to shield twice because we're just 2 away from another Aqua Tail here. Golurk now has the Shadow Punch loaded. It has been 4 Mud Slaps. They are probably going to look for the farm down, realizing we're not going to be able to make another Aqua Tail there. I'm going to bring in Togekiss. Togekiss realistically here just looking to no-shield the Shadow Punch and then go for the Dazzling Gleam for the pickup of the knockout onto the Golurk. Golurk is going to fire off another Shadow Punch here, and I'm going to have to shield this one up. Unfortunately, now they can just bring in their Stunfisk, so I predict that, and now I bring in my Dusknoir. Dusknoir, very comfortable with absorbing the Stunfisk energy, firing off 5 Astonishes, and now going for the Dynamic Punch onto the Stunfisk. This is going to be a sizable amount of damage onto that Fisk, and they are going to go for the losing CMP tie. We got one turn switch there, which in all fairness we did deserve, but that does mean that 15 turns into effectively 16 turns for the Dusknoir, and so they threw on 8 Thundershocks, which ended up being a CMP tie. Nevertheless, all that nerd talk out the way, going for the Shadow Punch, picking up the knockout onto the Stunfisk. Back in comes the Golurk. They know we've got the move loaded, and so they top left. GG's. Alright, getting into the next one, it is going to be Togekiss leading into Nidoqueen, and I try to fast move check, hoping it's on Mud Slap, because that's the only reason why Nidoqueen's been a part of any conversation recently, and this Mad Lad's on Poison Jab. Poison Jab, not even Poison Sting. What is happening? Not only that, but they have the very washed Pokemon Tapu Fini in the back. I don't even know what era this guy is from, but nevertheless, I'm going to be able to fire off 2 Shadow Punches at the Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini is still a pretty glassy pick in the Ultra League, so not going to be able to no-shield 2 Shadow Punches comfortably. They're going to be able to fire off a further move here, but I can either force their last shield or pick up the knockout onto the Tapu Fini with this next Shadow Punch. Going for Shadow Punch number 3, and these Water Guns have chipped us down very low, but not quite low enough, so the Shadow Punch is going to pick up the knockout. Back in comes the Nidoqueen. They're able to get that resisted farm down, and now I think I'm going to have to bring in the Palkia and just try to outpace this Nidoqueen, which is going to be a pretty tall task because they have a pretty healthy energy head start. I'm going to bring in the Palkia. I'm assuming that they're not going to full send here and they go for the Poison Fang, but that does half of my Palkia's HP. What is this? They bring in Jellicent that they have lurking in the back, but now I'm going to fire off the Dazzling Gleam with the Togekiss. Togekiss does hit relatively hard, so this Dazzling Gleam is going to do about 40% to the Jellicent, and that's pretty much all we needed to do, because that means the next one will be enough to pick up the knockout. I'm going to no-shield whatever move this is. I feel like it's going to be a Surf. It's a Shadow Ball, slaps me right in the face, and now they're going to fire off a Surf right after throwing the Shadow Ball, which means they have thrown 100 energy. That means I can bring in the Palkia, and Palkia has to go for a Aqua Tail, hoping this is going to be enough to KO. It's not quite likely going to be enough to KO. They're going to bring in the Nidoqueen, but Nidoqueen going to be swiftly met with the Aqua Tail. And now there's no way that the Jellicent can make enough energy to get rid of this Palkia. So Aqua Tail onto the Jellicent. Is it enough? Not quite, but oh, they got the farm down. No, Palkia, you disappointment. What is this? You know, we're going to act like that didn't happen and just get into the next game where it is going to be a Regidrago lead up against our Togekiss. Probably about the best case scenario. They are going to now bring in their Typhlosion. Typhlosion over-farming past the Thunder Punch, and now they're going to be able to send a Fire Punch at our Palkia. They are doubled up, so I can't really afford to shield it here. But Palkia is able to easily, tank that Thunder Punch, and they're going to go for another, but they just don't have enough for a third quite yet. So I am going to build up to the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Aqua Tail onto the Typhlosion would potentially pick up the knockout here, so are they going to shield it up? They are, but I'm one Aqua Tail away. I'm one Dragon Breath away from getting the Aqua Tail loaded, so I am going to shield up this next Thunder Punch and commit to the farm down. And now we've got nearly the Fire Blast loaded. We don't quite have it. You see me reaching for it. That Empoleon would have been in for a nasty surprise if we had it loaded, but we just don't. So we're going to settle with throwing both of these Aqua Tails, as I believe we would have gotten Metal Sound farm down before we were able to make the Fire Blast there. So I'm going to bring in Dusknoir. Dusknoir is able to absorb an Empoleon move. Not very well, but it is a non-Shadow Empoleon, so the Hydro Cannon only does about half. I'm going to need to overfarm carefully here. In comes Regidrago. Regidrago is now going to be tasked with eating multiple Shadow Punches. Now, was this necessary? Absolutely not. I could have just brought in my Togekiss here and won the game that way, but I'm going for a play of just going for double Shadow Punch, then going for the Peck farm down, having the Aura Sphere loaded, and even if they had a Hyper Beam here, which they do not, it's just not going to be enough damage. They go for the Breaking Swipe. That's not going to make this Aura Sphere KO the Empoleon any less, so we're going to go for the BM Dazzling Gleam just to assert dominance, and that resisted Dazzling Gleam is going to be enough to KO. GG's to this trainer. Alright, on to the next match, a very important fast move check up against the Charizard. Charizard is going to be on Dragon Breath. I really don't have any energy I can realistically throw at this Pokemon, but I'm going to build up as if I do. This could potentially be an ancient power, so I throw 6, fire off the Aura Sphere. Charizard is in fear for its life, so now I'm going to build up, just throw the Aura Sphere straight away, as the Peck Chip has done quite a lot onto the Charizard. They're going to be able to send the Blast Burn, but Togekiss in the Ultra League is not Togekiss of the Great League, where that Blast Burn would have easily one-shot. We're able to pick up the knockout there, and now we've basically neutralized this very terrifying Pokemon with just our Togekiss. I'm going to bring in Dusknoir looking for that farm down, and they allow us to do so. Personally, probably wouldn't have allowed that to happen, but they are going to have a Belly Bolt in the back. Once again, Belly Bolt is going to be on Thundershock here, but we are able to outpace to their first Parabolic Charge while throwing our Dynamic Punch on good timing. Getting that massive amount of damage onto the Belly Bolt off this early is going to be very, very impactful. We are going to fire off one further Astonish and the Shadow Punch. If they shield this move, it's a lot less useful of a shield, and so they are just going to let their Belly Bolt go, but it's a 2v1 in the end game, and we are going to need all the help we can get. We bank the Astonish for later, or rather the Shadow Punch for later. They are going to be able to build up to a potential Dazzling Gleam, and honestly, I'm shielding whatever this is. No, I'm not. It's an Aura Sphere bait. We call the bait successfully, and now we're at the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Aqua Tail up against the Togekiss would do a sizable amount of damage, not an amount of damage the Togekiss is going to be looking to no-shield here. That Peck sneaks through, but we do have that second Aqua Tail loaded. Palkia very low HP, but not quite low enough. We've got 2 shields loaded with our Dusknoir, and the Shadow Punch loaded as well. So this Shadow Punch easily going to dispatch the Flower Crown Togekiss. GG's to this trainer. There is seldom a better sight for me than seeing my Togekiss aligned onto somebody's Ultra League. What is that RPS Pokemon? Gastradon? Yeah, that one. That one's pretty lame. Anyway, Deja Vu, as they are going to safe switch into their own Togekiss. This one does not seem to have Psyshock, as we are going to be able to build up to 7, grab the shield, then bring in our Dusknoir. We know Dusknoir can comfortably no-shield any move from the Togekiss, but we are going to shield in case they send a Dazzling Gleam, and they do send a Dazzling Gleam. Now I'm going to fire off the Shadow Punch, putting an immense amount of pressure onto this Togekiss. Togekiss is going to let it go, and they're going to be able to make a last-second move here, but once again, we know Dusknoir will be able to absorb whatever this is. It is the Dazzling Gleam, and so we are going to get hit pretty hard there, but you may not think it, but it actually works out to our advantage. We're going to be able to fire off the Shadow Punch, but we have switch advantage, so their Gastradon is going to be basically permanently aligned onto our Gastradon, or I guess if we want, we could align it onto our Palkia. Palkia going to fire off the Aqua Tail. With that Shadow Punch chip, this Aqua Tail isn't quite yet threatening, but they are going to shield it up. They are going to fire off a move now at the Palkia, but Palkia does not have to respect this move. And now we can easily make the next move before they do, but we're going to bring in our Togekiss. Togekiss going to be met with the Corviknight. May have been worth keeping switch advantage here, but realistically, 3 Aura Spheres will still get this Corviknight into a range where it is very manageable for the Palkia. They are just firing off Air Cutters here, so Air Cutter, despite getting the boost, even another one is not going to be enough to KO, and their fast move pressure, if you could even call it that, of Sand Attack is going to be double resisted by the Togekiss, so they're not going to farm us down anytime soon either. They are now going to go for yet another Air Cutter. They can't really afford to go for the payback. In comes the Gastrodon. Gastrodon going to be met with an Aqua Tail before they're able to fire off a Body Slam, getting our Palkia any lower. They live on 1 HP, which generally would not be a problem, but although one turn bring in, I will give Niantic credit for once, has largely been nerfed, almost to the point where it's not as nearly existent. I can't say non-existent because I still see it from time to time. There is another glitch called Damage Registration Error, which allowed that Gastrodon to fire off that Body Slam on 1 HP when the Dragon Breath landing onto it should have taken priority. Nevertheless, we are going to fire off the Aura Sphere, still being able to win that game despite the game not working properly. Very familiar lead, as it is going to be the endgame scenario from the last game. If they're running Iron Head, this is a very bad spot for me, but they're not even going to fake like they're on Iron Head. They're just going to go for the Air Cutter straight away. This is so fine for me because everybody's like Togekiss and like Carbink in the Great League. Everybody's like lulled into a false sense of security, like, oh, they don't have Iron Head, they don't run that move, and so I'm going to absolutely shock some people with my Iron Head Corviknighting very soon in the near future. Nevertheless, I am going to go for a second Aura Sphere onto this Corviknight. 3 Aura Spheres basically put this into a range where we can either get the Peck down or just straight up KO. They're going to fire off yet another move here. They did get the air cutter boost, but this is not going to be enough to KO. I'm switching out into my Dusknoir, looking to get that Astonish down. I'm not going to be able to get it before they reach a further air cutter, but I know this isn't a payback, so I'm not going to shield it. Air cutter onto the Dusknoir is going to be survivable, of course. In comes Regidrago. Regidrago is now going to be tasked with taking 2 Shadow Punches. Regidrago is not going to be very happy about it because it is a very high HP stat Pokemon, but not very high in the defense stat. We're going to fire off this Shadow Punch. Shadow Punch grabs the shield from the Regidrago, and they are going to fire off a move here. Their bait move is now hilariously Dragon Energy, and Dragon Energy lands on my Dusknoir's forehead. I'm going to bring in my Togekiss. Togekiss going to fire off the Aura Sphere just before they make their next Dragon Energy to pick up the knockout here. You're going to see me immediately tapping on my Palkia button for very good reason. I really don't want to have my Togekiss get farmed down by like a potential stray Empoleon, so I am going to shield up this Body Slam and now look to fire off as many Aqua Tails at the Gastradon as possible. They attempt to catch, they fail to catch, and now I'm going for this Aqua Tail onto the Gastradon. They had to try to make something happen that does enough damage to where one of these next 2 Aqua Tails will easily be able to pick up the knockout here. Aqua Tail onto the Gastrodon, grabs the shield, but I've got another one loaded, so I undertap it. I think they might just survive on 1 HP here. Nope, down goes the Gastrodon. No flashbacks from that last game. GG's to this trainer. We've now made it to the final game of the video. It is going to be Togekiss leading into Typhlosion. Not at all a good lead, so I'm going to switch into my Dusknoir and fire off 4 Astonishes. And they do throw on alignment, which is very good for me. I got a free Astonish in for the road, and now they're going to bring in their own Togekiss. I am in range where a potential Dazzling Gleam will KO, but I do have the back-to-back of the Shadow Punches loaded. So I am going to undertap this next Shadow Punch, because if they undertap a Psyshock there, I don't want to take that damage without putting pressure on this first shield. And now they are going to fire off a move. We know this is only a Psyshock. That's not enough for the Dazzling Gleam. It's going to be an Ancient Power. What is this? The Ancient Power does enough damage where they're able to get that farm down. And now I'm on the back foot here. They're going to be able to fire off another potential Ancient Power, I guess, at my Togekiss. And maybe they have this move for the mirror. But this actually doesn't matter as much as you think, because if they bring back in the Typhlosion, we have the pacing advantage. They left with 0 energy. They threw 40 energy after throwing 2 Incinerates, so they are completely dry. They have 1 Incinerate there, but we're able to fire off 2 more pecks and get this Aura Sphere. A massive miscalculation from my opponent. They drop their shield, they drop their Typhlosion, they drop a Zygarde onto the field up against a Togekiss and Trainer. Just reach for the top left. I'm going to go for the Dazzling Gleam. This is going to do enough damage where the Zygarde is not going to be able to put up much of a fight up against our Palkia. They have 1 win con, and that is yeeting the Outrage right at my Palkia's forehead, but we're going to put up the Protect Shield. We make the Aqua Tail, and we're going to throw out alignment for the maximum amount of BM. Aqua Tail onto the Zygarde. What league am I even playing in anymore? GG's to this trainer. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Togekiss, of course, a very good Pokemon for the Ultra League. I don't know about Palkia as much, but Palkia definitely did some things in that video, so I would definitely recommend Togekiss. If you want a 9-turn Dragon Breath user, I would probably recommend Gyarados, but you do have to be very wary of Bellibolt being an absolute RPS menace up against your poor, whatever Gyarados is. I guess it's like a water snake. I don't know. Anyway, thanks once again so much for watching. I've been Shmeaty. I hope to see you all again next time, and have a good rest of your day. See ya.